Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
This is the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez.
Welcome to the show. We got a full house today as we approach the Christmas holiday. I'm Jeff Sharon. We got Eric, we got Drew, we got Kyle. Bryson's going to join us in a little bit. The cold fronts are coming through, boys, and that means we got lots of changes to talk about as the weather switches. A lot of guys in the transfer portal. We'll talk about UCF's open offensive coordinator job and speculate recklessly about that. We're going to talk about basketball. We're going to talk about McKenna Melville being first-team All-American. But this, gentlemen, will be our bowl preview show because, well, I'm fairly certain this bowl game, UCF against Duke in the Military Bowl, is going to be on a Wednesday. So we're going to record this podcast next week after that. So, right? If my schedule is to be believed.
We could record between.
Bowl game's 2 weeks away.
Yeah. Oh, it's 2 weeks away. Oh, God. Like this. Well, the rest of the year has flown by.
How much eggnog have you had?
Why would this? Not enough, apparently.
Or not enough.
Not enough,
This is what
apparently.
happens when you're a Giants fan in the NFL these days, kind of.
Still
you just want to get through December alive is what you want to do. But anyway.
Still get over that claw, huh?
Yes. So here we are, UCF and Duke taking over in the Military Bowl. So we'll be talking about that for a little bit as we get ready for this game. I just want to kind of set the table a little bit here for this game too, before we talk about the coordinators and all that stuff. This is a Duke team that comes in 8-4, 5-3 in the ACC. They got the ACC head coach of the year in Mike Elko in his first season. Okay. Overall about the matchup, and Eric, I want to start with you. Is this okay? Level up. Give me a letter grade for excitement. A, oh my God, bring on Duke. F, like I have, groceries to shop for during the game.
Wow. So from a selfish standpoint, I'm excited as an A because I'm benefiting from this professionally. But as a fan,
because after all, we look out for number one here.
Amen to that. Who doesn't? As a fan, I would say C. So I don't know what's the equivalent of C.
I'm gonna be. I guess it's like I'm gonna be watching, but
the drinking wouldn't be.
I'm gonna be baking a pizza instead.
Yeah, I mean, unless you told me Zion Williamson was coming back and RJ Barrett, and we could play that. And then that jumps up.
Why though?
Because when I think of Duke, I think of basketball. And I think of that payback, baby, for 2019. That's what I'm thinking.
Oh, I feel you pushing it up to a B now.
There you go. I'm not thinking about Mike Elko and football. Duke, Kyle's favorite conference, by the way, the Atlantic Coast.
This is a Duke team, by the way, that beat Miami, BC, Virginia Tech, Wake Forest this year. They beat Virginia earlier this year as well.
That's such an ACC Coastal type of a resume, which we're going to miss, by the way. We realize the ACC Coastal is RIP now after this year. So
number 2 in the country in turnover margin, by the way.
And ACC fans celebrate everywhere.
Drew?
I give kind of like a B-. It's, from a casual fan standpoint, Duke and football doesn't make you excited, but you know what? This is the end of an era from, the group of five.
You guys are such P5 fans. It's unbelievable. Bowl game, whatever.
That's true.
I've always been in the camp. Bowl games are exhibition games. I've never really put as much stock in as others because it truly is an exhibition game. But this also, to bring up the grade up a little bit, you're going to see an opportunity for some players to start seeing a little bit of playing time as a result of players that have transferred out. So you're getting a little glimpse of the future today. And that should be a little more exciting.
Kyle?
So I don't want to hear anything about P5 bias, but the Cure Bowl looks more interesting to me right now because it's got two ranked teams.
Actually, the Cure Bowl's got a good match.
They got
this
it
year,
right.
I will tell you. They got it
They
right.
hit a home run.
And the media people they have covering that game is top of the notch level. Am I right, Kyle?
Speaking of looking out for number one.
Listen,
Flatter will get you everywhere.
True, but remember, Eric, I don't live in your district, so you can't get my vote. Listen, at the end of the day, guys, you're right. That matchup I bring up is because it's two ranked teams and it's a great defense. There's a good offense, and then someone got hot later. But the punchline, enough of talking about Chip Lindsey's old coaching grounds. What I'm getting at is this, guys.
Which we'll get to in a bit.
I'm teasing it. The whole aspect of this game is tarnished by all the high quality talent that's already decided to transfer. I'm still waiting to find out for certain if Isaiah Boucher's going to play, right? There's certain other aspects and certain other guys that could render themselves not playing because of decisions they make for their futures in there correctly looking out for number one. Duke, at the end of the day, I got to be honest, and UCF was going to get here one day if they were growing, but we're here. I really think this game is more important for Duke in the standpoint
Are you suggesting that somebody may not care about a bowl game? I was told many years ago that's sacrilegious.
Well, it is, but this game is particular because, because there are already so many players we know are missing.
Right.
UCF may not, in fact, have its best product. Try convincing the rest of the world of that. That's going to be tough. Duke is actually a very good matchup, but the problem is, as much as people commented on watching the quality of the Louisville game and of the Georgia Tech game, expect a game of that ilk in tempo, but the opponent being a lot better than Georgia Tech was when they came to the bounce house. So
Georgia Tech had checked out of that game, I think.
My point exactly. So with that in mind, as far as excitement goes, this particular offense, without the movement and shaking of Ryan O'Keefe and then the top defenders being compromised as well, their ability to be on the roster. I'm not saying Boca Raton Bowl bad against BYU a couple years back, but if you put anything above a C, you're showing off.
Well, I want to talk about this a little bit because and I want to talk about the portal coming up next because this is the big story that's going on right now. But I'll say two things, and Eric's going to laugh, and I know he is, or he's going to be like, "That's dumb." But there's two things at stake here. All right. Number one, 10-win season.
Yes.
All right. I think that still matters. Eric, you're shaking your head, but you're the guy who loves numerology and all that kind of crap.
I mean,
so to me, there's 10 wins. There's something about that number that's like, I won double digits that year.
That does matter more than
that. But that number is going to doesn't matter anymore with the more games being added, and especially with an expanded playoff.
That's not true.
10 wins is pretty easy. Actually.
Let me say, easy.
Oh, less than
10 wins is not easy.
10 wins is not easy. Sorry.
This ain't 1995 where teams only played 11 games and you had to actually be good to win 10 games.
But the other thing I think we're missing here too is part of the leap into the Power Five is doing what you can to get your buzz and your conversation into the preseason ranking.
Sure. That's my second point.
Actually matter. Well, I apologize.
That's the plus in my B plus.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes. Listen, sorry, Kyle, but I think what you're trying to say
your
is
point. Take it. Yeah.
Okay, I will steal it back. The point that I was going to make was you win this game against an ACC opponent. To me, that always it's like when Andy Seeley said, right? A win is better than a loss.
I thought that was
you won details. You win that game, you're not going into your new conference having just lost to Duke in your last bowl game. It's like, hey, we finished the season with 10 wins. We beat an ACC team in the bowl game, just like we're supposed to. Here we are.
I also don't think anybody will remember this game 5 years from now.
Who cares about 5 years from now?
But the point is, that's like the Florida game people will remember. Nobody's going to remember this game. And the part of the problem is you're playing the wrong team from Tobacco Road, because brands do matter. If you're playing North Carolina in this game, and especially with the news we'll get to later, there's some intrigue there. If it was Miami that was in this bowl game, people are interested. But it's Duke. Nobody cares.
Well, no one's giving it an A either, Eric. Let's be clear. Like, who here?
I care.
B plus, and
that's not an A.
But Kyle, you brought up a good point. We still don't know how many players are going to generally play.
Right.
UCF starts practicing for the bowl games, from what I understand, this weekend. So we'll start, as the time goes here, we're going to start hearing more names. And let's be real, I think you're going to hear more guys that won't play in this game, right? Is that a fair assumption? I think we will have more names that probably will skip the bowl game for various reasons.
It's possible, yeah. And I'll even give Drew and Jeff this much credit. If I get confirmation Isaiah's coming back to take a shot to raise his NFL stock, I will take it up to a B minus.
Well, along those lines,
stop right there. Why is that funny, Eric Lopez?
It's just Drew. It's Drew being Drew, and me. That's just.
I thought you were
man. If only you guys could read our chat right now. Well, this does take us to our next point, which is everyone's flipping out about the transfer portal. As of this recording, which we are doing on Thursday,
portal, Jeff. I'm glad you're back. By the way,
I was never leaving. I don't know about you. I mean,
you didn't enter the portal.
You're the one who's always like, I don't know if I'm happy here. We need a new coordinator.
He tried to attract Trey Stroko without my consent.
As we record this, mid-afternoon, Thursday, December the 15th, 13 players from this year's team, this past year, from the 2022 team, I should say, have announced that they are entering the portal, including Mikey Keene, Ryan O'Keefe, Jordan Johnson, the wide receiver, Jordan Johnson, Joey Gatewood, running back Anthony Williams, punter Andrew Osteen, and also defensive players such as Devontae Brown, Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste, Terrence Lewis, Phil J. Bienemy, Travion Shadrack Harris, Amari Lee, who was a wide receiver or defensive back, depending upon who you asked, and Carlos Bailey Weiss. That said, UCF has gotten 2 incoming transfers: Antonio Greer, 2-time All-ACC second-teamer with South Florida, interestingly enough, and former Edgewater High School wide receiver coming down from Alabama, Christian Leary, with 2 years left of eligibility. I keep saying this time and time again. Nobody in UCF land wants to listen, so I will repeat myself.
Preach the gospel.
Folks, let the portal play out, okay?
The portal giveth, and
the portal giveth
away,
and the portal taketh away.
Hallelujah, Jeff.
Let it taketh away. It shall giveth in due time.
Praise portal.
But I will say, and Kyle, I want to start with you because we're going to go in reverse order now.
I am feeling the spirit of the portal. It's okay, Jeff. I can go.
He likes being the rear.
Who's the one that leaves here that you're like, oh man, that one hurts?
O'Keefe. Definitely.
Yeah.
Ryan O'Keefe being gone is problematic. I in second place to me, but then again, as much as I'll say my
in fairness to Ryan, he's been here for all 4 years.
Correct.
He announced that he's going to Boston College to reunite with UCF's former wide receivers coach up at BC. I forget his name off the bat.
And listen,
Darryl Wyatt. Thank you.
Yeah, he should be able to shred the inferior competition of that conference. But with all that in mind, that's right. I said it. There's that shot at the ACC. I know Eric Lopez was looking for. With that in mind, for me, that's the biggest shot to the offense, because over and above his ability to burn people down the field, he had other aspects in his game. He could be part of the run game as well. Incredibly versatile despite his size. Excellent team leading presence too. It's the problem with becoming a team that's so obviously run first is that good receivers will start to shy away. And Ryan O'Keefe is the first among that list. I think that's problematic. It's funny. I was just at the press conference for the Cure Bowl, and both coaches from Troy and UTSA. So I'm mentioning this as a kind of a universal concept.
Cheap plug.
What's that?
Cheap plug.
What? I didn't mention the 3-point conversion until you just said that. Anyways, but the no, but with all of that in mind, like I feel like that's something we're not talking enough about is the recruitment process within a school's building. How well is Gus doing with that? And that's a separate question, obviously.
Drew?
Well, on offense, obviously Ryan is the biggest loss. My overall, and I said it last time, and I'm still riding with it, and most because of the collateral damage around there is Devontae Brown. You look at that defensive backfield; it's taken a lot of hits. Newt Wilson, who is the other top end defensive back declaring for the NFL draft.
I was going to say we should mention Newt is declaring for the NFL draft.
Yeah, and he will be playing at the Hula Bowl at UCF in January, amongst a bunch of other nights. But considering how bad that position group is as far as their condition at this point, that's the biggest loss. Because you look at wide receivers. Wide receivers are in good shape even without Ryan. Obviously, Ryan's hard to replace, but it's not like the unit is not doing well. It's not healthy. You still have some really good players there that can pick up the slack and can learn and grow in. Like we're seeing Xavier Townsend's going to be a rock star. He's just growing into the role. You look at linebacker. They just brought in Antonio Greer, who is a very good linebacker. He just played for a bad team. That's a big thing.
Was pretty good for that team, I should say.
Yeah, you don't get on the All-American, All-AAC team, even as a second unit.
Can I say for a second, good. It is so freaking annoying with the American, because they almost rope you into saying you're an All-American.
Yeah, and I almost said, it's like, at that point you have to say All-American Athletic Conference. It does not roll off the tongue at all.
It's a trap.
It is a trap. But the defensive backfield, real quick, the defensive backfield hasn't had very good luck as far as pulling in guys from the portal. And so I think that's right now the biggest overall loss from where you've been to where you're going at this juncture.
Eric, what do you think?
I agree with Drew. I think everything he makes a valid point. I think wide receivers is an easier position to find. I don't think Ryan O'Keefe was going to be successful here as long as John Rice Plumlee is the quarterback. I think that got proven out on the field. I actually think Ryan O'Keefe is a little overrated. And I think he could be Jalen Robinson 2.0. How did Jalen Robinson do at Ole Miss last year? 5 catches.
Not so good, Bob.
Not so great. And I'm
not great, saying, Bob.
We'll see how he does. Now he's going to be at Boston College. Daryl Wyatt, obviously the old wide receiver coach, is there, and that might go well. My concern with him is who the heck's going to be throwing the ball at Boston College? I don't think they've had a good quarterback there since Matt Ryan. Plus, he gets a little cold out there in the second half of the year there at Chestnut Hill. I think Brown's harder. The secondary. Brown, and he was a guy that was not a 4-year guy. He would have, I think you were hoping he would have another year or two under his belt. I do worry about the secondary and how you can fix that in a quick dime, especially when you're going into the Big 12, which is there's going to be a lot of focus on the secondaries and when you get into the Big 12.
Well, the Big 12 is where defenses go to die.
Pretty much.
Correct. The only thing I would push back on, Elo, in your assessment is Ryan O'Keefe had a lot more dimensions to his game than run real fast. That's all Jalen Robinson can do, and that's what got exposed when he went to the next.
Touche. I agree with that. That's fair. But
the only knock on Ryan was the fact he was a little undersized, but he played bigger than he was.
Correct.
Let's not dunk on what he's done. He's accomplished a lot, and this offense really isn't built for him, but he adapted, and you got to give him credit for that.
Yeah. Well, he was instrumental in keeping the offense afloat when Dylan Gabriel went down and Mike Hakeem took over, because the game plan immediately shifted to, okay, we have to find a way to get the ball to Ryan O'Keefe because he's our best weapon. And he was it.
Remember, Jalen Robinson was hurt.
Right.
He benefited from
him
that
and
injury.
a pack of
crackers.
he benefited from the injury. And you look at this year, it was really Baker and Kobe Hudson when Kobe Hudson was on the field. I mean, my point is, I think it's easier to replace a receiver. I think there's so many receivers out there that will come in, and we'll see what they bring in. Now, is it a guarantee? No, and not. And that could certainly backfire, Kyle, to your point. Where
Kyle is shaking his head.
There's off-the-field leadership involved.
I mean, and I'm a little, again, I'm going to have to express my disappointment in Drew for not making this point. You're spending too much time talking about defense. Guys, can we please think about the reason Hudson and Walker were getting looks is because if you're game planning this offense, you're looking at O'Keefe first because he can do more stuff. So obviously it's going to create some one-on-ones and some openings. And listen, Gus and his offense, he wrote a book. He's a good offensive coach, contrary to what certain elements of UCF alleged fanhood populace might think. He's that they took advantage of that and bless him for it.
I will say the two biggest losses to me right off the bat were the headliners, obviously O'Keefe, and then I can't believe none of you said Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste. But
second.
Okay, but I will say that the fact that UCF was able to bring in two guys immediately at those positions bodes well and leads me to think that, at least as of right now, I would say Devontae Brown. And for a point, and really the reason why is the good point that Eric made. He has 2 years of eligibility left.
And what's the portion of either defense or offense that has been the most struggled to recruit? It's that beef, bringing in my mind more value to Baptiste's departure than the defensive backs.
Yeah, but the fact that they were able to pull in Antonio Greer from South Florida, yes, and Christian Leary from Alabama, and Leary is a homegrown kid. He went to Edgewater High School, so definitely I think that softens the blow in particular. But now one blow that definitely needs to be softened, and this is where we begin to speculate recklessly, actually broke earlier today. Chip Lindsey, the co-offensive coordinator for UCF and quarterbacks coach, has left to take that position at North Carolina. So here we are with without an offensive coordinator. Now this is where the speculatron really hops on board. We were doing research a little bit earlier on the names of what turned out to be listen, Gus's coaching tree extends everywhere. I mean, it's like St. Augustine grass, man. He's coached alongside a lot of people. It's really amazing when you look at it.
It's a coaching yard, not a tree.
Yeah, it's a forest. It's a full-blown forest. But I want to bring Bryson in real quick because Bryson, we were throwing you and I were throwing around, and Eric and Kyle some names here and there, and we're going to be pushing these up on the site blackandgoldbanneret.com. But there's obviously Herb Hand internally is a potential candidate, the offensive line coach. Who else do we have in mind that we were thinking of here?
Well, one more internal candidate we have is a running backs coach and still titled as a co-offensive coordinator when he joined the staff with G.J. Kinney, Tim Harris Jr. Mm-hmm. He's been the running backs coach, and he was originally a co-OC with G.J. Kinney. And, the running game has been really good lately, so that's another option from within. As far as external candidates go, we could see a repeat of when he hired this guy after he was finished his after he was fired as the head coach of Auburn, Chad Morris. Chad Morris is currently the head coach, currently the offensive analyst at USF. And so he could potentially be a hire for the offensive coordinator position again. If we want to think about what a John Rice Plumlee led offense could do, back in 2019, John Rice Plumlee blossomed under the watch of offensive coordinator at Ole Miss at the time, Rich Rodriguez,
former West Virginia and Michigan head coach. Interestingly enough, boy, that would be a fun name, wouldn't it?
This is trouble we don't need.
I want to go through some
coach at Jacksonville State.
Yeah, right. I want to go through a couple other names here. Del McGee coached under Gus and is the running backs coach at the University of Georgia. Some of the names who have passed through his watchful eye: Nick Chubb, DeAndre Swift, Sony Michel. Those guys are pretty good at football. Ryan Applin, who was the quarterback for Gus at Arkansas State, has gone into coaching, pass game coordinator at Georgia Southern. A really interesting name, I think, Jonathan Wallace, who's the running backs coach at Kansas under Drew's favorite coach in the whole wide world, Lance Leipold. He was at Bethel College and Air Force previously, and was also at Auburn from 2013 to 2015. Bobby Bentley, who I think I've heard is pretty good friends with Gus, who was coaching just recently at South Florida. Damian Craig, who played quarterback at Auburn and later coached at Auburn under Gus as well, might be a name that could pop up. Twitter wants desperately, they see offensive coordinator and they think, oh, let's bring Scott Frost back. And they see quarterbacks coach and they're like, let's bring KZ in there. I'm like, how
about no?
All due respect.
How about no?
Due respect to both of those gentlemen, I don't think they're probably going to be overly high up on the list as of right now, and probably have some other things that they would want to attend to in the meantime, rather than work 120 hours a week once again. So, I'm just saying, don't be disappointed if neither of them end up getting the nod, although, boy, that would be interesting if either of them did. I will start with
Jeff. Isn't it better just to say not yet? Isn't
I
don't think either are interested at this juncture.
No, they're not. But Drew, I'll start with you since I didn't start with you in the previous two questions. Who would you like to see as the next offensive coordinator or co-offensive coordinator or whatever it is, offensive coordinator at UCF to replace Chip Lindsey?
Well, when this came up last year, one of the names that I threw around was Damian Craig, and I think that is still a very intriguing name. He has, a relationship with Gus Malzahn, knows what he likes to do, and I think that would lead to a smoother transition. Chip Lindsey obviously knows the style that Gus Malzahn likes to run, which is why he was brought in. I think continuity is important, and I think you get better continuity by bringing in someone a little more familiar. Plus, he's due for a promotion. He's a positional coach at Texas A&M. Things have been a little rough there. This gets him up to offensive coordinator, as we've seen in
get off of Jimbo Fisher sinking ship immediately.
Yeah, well, I'm serious. Things are not going well there. But as
weighed down by his buyout anyway.
As Bryson mentioned earlier today, UCF actually is a pretty good stepping stone for offensive coordinator jobs to move elsewhere and move on up. This would be a good spot for him.
There's no precedent for that, Drew. Where have you seen that happen before?
Yeah, I know, right? Eric?
I'm with Drew. I mean, it makes a lot of sense because here's the thing. Gus is going to call the plays. So that's why, while everybody gets excited about the offensive coordinator position, I personally don't think it's as big of a deal because Gus is going to call his plays. It's his offense. So he's going to bring somebody in that knows that system, and Craig makes a lot of sense in that regard. Somebody like that, if there's going to be a coordinator that wants to call plays, he's not coming here. So I like the Craig move personally. I think if you're Damian Craig, I would get out of the A&M deal. You could come here, get a few start. That's definitely a choice. I would tend to agree with Drew on that. I'm assuming, of course, that Drew and Kyle will turn down the job first because I think they should be at the top of the list personally.
Well, okay, let me ask you a quick, Kyle, I'm sorry, but I want to get to this because I want to see what you think about this.
Yeah.
The whole Gus calling his plays thing, it is kind of, it seems to be a sticking point here, right? Do you see a situation where Gus would maybe delegate that? No? Why not?
Not
He
yet.
said so. I mean, when he came here, he said he wishes he didn't give up play calling at Auburn.
Fair. Yeah, you're right.
That again.
He was forced into it.
And some coaches
it didn't go so well at Auburn, right? I mean,
right, with Chad Morris, which is why I don't see Chad Morris being the answer here necessarily. So I would be stunned if Gus gave up play calling because he's talked about it since he's been here how much he enjoys that aspect of the game. And so I just would be stunned. And I do think because of that, it will take out some of the candidates to some extent. But Gus has such a big tree that I don't think it's as big of a loss as far as you might lose some names, but you still have a ton of names he's going to pick from. Because at the end of the day, he's going to pick somebody he's familiar with.
Kyle, give me a name that's not Damian Craig.
I mean, I don't know why, for my money, based on the point which Eric made, that's awesome, by the way. Like, I don't see how this goes outside the house. I really think Herb Hand is the most legit candidate, if not.
Coach Harris, who has the OC title already built.
I partially meant Harris. Yes, thank you. Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, and see, here's the thing. The reason why I think it's Herb Hand over Tim Harris is when Tim Harris would, in my mind at least, thinking more like an offensive lineman here, right? A guy looking for a promotion on that front would be trying to do so to call his own plays somewhere too, to evolve to that point, right? With Herb, I get less of that feeling. I think he likes getting his hands dirty in the preparation side and then, working to game day more than he necessarily seeks calling the plays himself. Obviously, I can't confirm that we got our speculation hat on, as Jeff warns, but that's a lot of why I'm in the Herb Hand camp for this right now is simply to that point of it would make sense. It's a fit with what's going on that you could continue the momentum very easily, which Gus has not had a chance to do in terms of changing offensive personnel, at least, right? So with all that in mind, and without the worry of the whole play calling piece, I that's where I am.
Well, let me ask you guys this. Let's say it's Harris or Hand that gets promoted. Does that open the door for KZ to be the quarterback coach only? Because at that point, one of the reasons I like Craig, I don't know if Drew likes Craig for this reason. I mean, Damian Craig would obviously coach the quarterbacks and, be part of the offense. That's kind of the missile. But in this scenario, if you have Harris or Hand promoted, who's to say you don't bring McKenzie, who's already around the program? He said on these airwaves, Jeffrey, to us, that he would be interested in being a coach down the road.
This isn't very far down the road, though.
But who's to say that now wouldn't be the right time? Timing is everything. Again, I'm only saying this if Kyle's choice of a Harris or Hand get promoted, because you still need to find somebody to coach the quarterbacks.
Here's the thing, though, and here we are planning out Mackenzie Milton's future without his input. To go from not coaching to a quarterback coach at a Big 12 school with no coaching experience before, like no formal coaching experience, I should say. That's a big jump. Now, if anybody can do that, it's Mackenzie, right? But usually you see, look at all these guys' resumes, right? You usually see like grad assistant here, quarterbacks coach at like a D2 school, quarterbacks coach at, McNeese State, quarterbacks, and then quarterbacks coach at Auburn or Arkansas State or wherever Gus was at the time. KZ would be jumping in cold. And we all know coaching is a grind in college. It is to quote Tom Cruise and Jerry Maguire, it is an up at dawn, pride swallowing siege that they will never fully tell us about. Right. So I mean, if KZ, I think it really wants to get into it, and nobody knows the path better than he would, I think it probably wouldn't start as a quarterbacks coach at UCF. It would start as like a graduate assistant. Right.
The only pushback I would give to that, Jeff, if I'm McKenzie's agent and I'm trying to interview and campaign for this opportunity, which we don't know he is, to your point, we're planning out his life. I think the years of him essentially coaching Dylan Gabriel that year should be commensurate with having a year of experience as a quarterback.
Some would argue he already did the grad coach position when he was out. To your point,
fair point.
That's a great point.
That's a good point.
Dylan Gabriel.
That's a good point. Yeah. I don't know. Do you before we wrap this up, do we think that Gus is going to make this move quick or what?
He would have to.
Be sooner than later.
Yeah.
Like before the bowl game or after?
I think before the bowl game. I think
before the bowl game,
right?
I think before.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you want to have somebody in place by signing day. Yeah.
I would imagine that he's got to have some, he probably already has his list in mind. Like all these coaches have their, to use a really antiquated term, Rolodex, right? Of guys who they're going to call, or right off the bat. And then it's just a question of, you ready to do it? No, not yet. Okay, cool. What about this guy? And so on and so forth. So it's not like there's, one thing we know for sure is Gus is not starting from scratch.
Yeah, he's making phone calls as we speak, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, no, I think he's already made the phone calls.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'll break news. That ringing earlier about the holiday music, that was my phone. I think it was Gus actually calling me for a recommendation on Drew and Kyle.
I was going to say, Eric, if he's calling you, man, boy,
no, I'm the reference guy.
If he was calling you for the job, like, we're in bad shape, man.
No, they wanted reference on Kyle and Drew, and I sent good stuff. I sent all of Drew's knee-jerk reaction columns. You guys should be good. You should get a phone call.
Jeez Louise. All right. We're gonna Drew says he wants to get out of here because he doesn't want to talk about basketball for some reason. I don't know why. Basketball is more fun anyway. But we get back. It's a relatively abbreviated show here for the holidays. When we get back, we're going to talk women's hoops. We're going to talk men's hoops, who blasted Ole Miss last night in Oxford. That was fun to watch. And some volleyball news before we wrap it up on this relatively short show here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. You can find Drew on Twitter at StatBoyDrew. And yeah, so when we come back, the other four of us will continue the party without him because he's no fun. All right, stick around.
I got other important work that needs to be done for the safety of us all.
Oh,
air quote important when he says that, please.
When we say
important work.
Are you updating your resume to be the next offensive quality control coach at UCF?
I cannot confirm nor deny.
Yeah.
Or are you going to Bethel College or something like that?
He's working.
There's a spot open at Podunk University out in Kansas.
Podunk. There is no such thing as Podunk. It's funnier if you come up with a real university, Drew. Come on.
Well, I mean, I could say, hey,
Kyle
I'm going to be the
taught
offensive
you anything
analyst.
About punchlines.
I'm going to be the offensive analyst for the smart guys at Case Western Reserve University.
I thought you were going to go to Wasamata U.
I set you guys up.
And you gave me grief for Podunk.
Get me out of here. All right, stick around. I'll be right back. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
All right, we are back. It's Jeff and Eric along with Kyle and Bryson, and we are going to talk some hoops and some volleyball here in this relatively short show. We don't want to take up too much of your time here on this holiday. I don't know, maybe we should. Like, everyone was like, oh man, your podcast got us through 2 hours of our drive on Thanksgiving weekend the other week. I was like, so on behalf of all of us, you're welcome. Let's start with men's hoops here because boy, did they take it to the Ole Miss Rebels in Oxford on Wednesday night. Eric Lopez and Kyle Nash, 72-61 the final, but UCF jumped out to a 21-0 lead in this game. Ole Miss came back, made it a game. It is their home floor. They got guys on scholarship too, But the highlights, 4 guys in double figures. CJ Kelly with 20 to lead UCF and 9 rebounds. 8 of 10 from the floor. He hit 3 of 4 from three-point range. He was outstanding. Taylor Hendricks, who has never not won the Freshman of the Week award in the American in his entire career. 5 of 11, 6 of 6 at the line, which I like to see. 17 points and 7 rebounds, 3 blocks.
Thank you.
11 from Ithiel Horton, who just continues to score points rather quietly. Darius Johnson had a rough night from the field, 4 of 17, but still came up with 10 points to go with 3 assists. 8 and 7 from Michael Durr also. Mostly just these guys, right? Because the other 5 guys the other 4 guys who played didn't play any more than about 11 minutes and didn't really contribute too much in terms of shooting. But this is a pretty surprising, I think, start to this game against an Ole Miss team that. Well, I mean, I haven't checked where they are in the SEC, to be honest with you, but But Kyle, I want to start with you. This was it. I'm always a big fan of like road wins whenever they happen, right?
Sure.
I don't care if it's against the Power 5 opponent or not. Like, it's hard to win on the road in college basketball, and to do it the way UCF did, that showed me something.
I think it's the aspect that it was pretty dominant in the way that it occurred, right? And listen, let's give credit to the hallmark there. That Coach Dawkins always look for: defense. Holding this group below 70 is a solid performance on that front. I feel like they did a good job hitting the free throws they did get, which in some games was slightly problematic, but you said it best. CJ Kelly doing amazing things. And I have to say, it was funny. Somebody asked him after the FSU game what he can work on to make his game better. And he said, I expect myself to get more rebounds. I'm an oversized guard. And he gets 9 on the road against an SEC team. The young man's doing his thing. What can we say on that front? And CJ Kelly, I've been thoroughly impressed with. I didn't know a lot about him coming in, I'll grant, but I loved the leadership language he gave to me when I spoke to him at Hoops Media Day. And he's continued to show himself not only, a leader when he hitting big shots when they were needed, including an overtime field goal. I believe that might have been only one of 2 field goals UCF made in that overtime. The rest were free throws. But coming up in big moments like that, providing that extra push when there's struggles elsewhere, coming off the bench at times doing it. He started this game, obviously, but I mean, CJ Kelly has been a heck of a story. It's going to happen that you might get overshadowed by a Taylor Hendricks. I mean, I'm severely disappointed. He actually missed more than 1 shot in this game and scored below 20 points. Cut him. But no, joking aside,
he's joking. He's joking, Taylor. Don't listen to Kyle.
It's a joke. Listen, we have laughs
we'll
all the
cut
time.
Kyle before that happens.
That's probably fair. I would accept that humbly. But you mentioned the other minutes for the big men. Brandon Suggs, Lehat Tune only getting 11 minutes themselves as big men. Listen, when you have Taylor Hendricks and CJ Kelly, and they're hot as guys who you could plug in basically anywhere in the front court, in Hendricks's case, and in CJ's case, anything 3 or higher, he could basically play anywhere on the entire backcourt. You got versatile guys like that. Some guys that specialize in a particular area of the court are going to take a seat to let the guys with the hot hand rock and roll. I see what happened there.
Eric, you broke this thing down on the site, which you can check out right now. But a couple things I wanted to point out too on this. UCF's numbers, and this is defensive numbers, 24th in the country in scoring defense, giving up just 60.4 points per game. 27th in the country in field goal percentage defense, 38.2%. And they're doing a really good, we always talk about, Eric, right, live by the 3, die by the 3. Well, UCF is killing a lot of teams at the 3 because they're 17th in the country in 3-point percentage defense. That's 3-point percentage allowed, just 27.3%. What that tells me is, we heard a lot last year about why are they switching so much, right? Johnny likes to play a switching sort of NBA style defense. It's working. These guys switch and they switch quick, and you just don't get open looks against them.
Correct. And for example, Taylor Hendricks, we focus a lot about his offensive production, but his defense has to be brought up because he's part of that. He can guard so many different guys defensively. And that's what they do. That's what their identity is. And to me, the Ole Miss win is their biggest win of the year. They were inside the top 60 RPI in the net rankings.
Yeah, 58.
This is actually, according to the net, because this is part of the criteria they use for picking to select the 68 teams in the field. This is right now going to go down as a quad 1 win. A road game against a team in the top 75 net usually gets you a quad win. So this is huge. Huge win against an Ole Miss team that got to the championship game of the ESPN Disney tournament, and by many experts project to make the field in the SEC, from the SEC. So this is a big win on the road. CJ Kelly, 20 points, 16 of those 20 came in the second half, and they were huge baskets because Ole Miss, as you mentioned, Jeff, made runs. They cut it down to 4 at one point. You're thinking, oh my goodness. And what do we say the last couple of years? Like, oh, this team just can't close. Who's going to close the game? certain people didn't, would not show up in a half or struggle. CJ Kelly kept burying shots from the perimeter.
Yeah, he was relentless.
And he had great big rebounds. And Taylor Hendricks, his greatness, scoring 11 of 17 in the second half. He knows the big moments in games. He's learning that quickly. I tell you something, man. I don't know what the ceiling is for this team, but I do know this. They're a better team than the last couple of years. Better defensively, and I think the pieces fit better on this team. They have more depth. Johnny Dawkins has told me this is the deepest roster he's had from especially in the front court. I mean,
remember they were saying that about last year's team?
Yeah,
and it turns out this year's team with all the newcomers is the deeper team.
Right, because Michael Durr was tremendous at that 21-0 start in that against Ole Miss. And by the way, those first 9 minutes of UCF game against Ole Miss, I wrote this on blackandgoldbanneret.com right now, Kyle. Bing! Thank you. In my 20-plus years of following UCF basketball as a student, fan, and media, that's the best 9-minute stretch I've ever seen any UCF basketball team ever play. Ever.
Even over Michigan.
Offense and defense. You don't see teams scoring 21-0 in the first 9 minutes.
I'm just posing the question, Eric Lopez. No one said you were wrong.
Now, the Michigan game, to your point, that's the greatest shooting performance I've ever seen from a UCF team. To credit to them, that was the highlight of last season, to your point. But this team did it on both sides of the court. Offensively, they were efficient, 21 points. Defensively, they forced in Ole Miss to 8 turnovers and shut them out to the point where, as ridiculous as it sounds, there were times during that 9-minute stretch where I'm thinking, are they not going to let him score the whole night? Like, it was that good defensively against a good team at Ole Miss is always good at home. And credit to them, because Jeff made a point. Ole Miss made a run, as they all say. Everybody makes a run in basketball. And I wondered, how is this team going to answer that? And they did. And I think this team has closers. Darius Johnson showed he can close earlier in the year. I think Kelly has shown now he's proven to be a clutch guy who can close in big moments. I think Taylor Hendricks can close. They have guys they can go to down the stretch when they can get buckets. That's one of the developments here is they're trying to figure out who they are. And now as they go to against Missouri on Sunrise, I think they're playing with house money. I was hoping for a split this week. If they can go to Sunrise and beat a Missouri team that's 9-1, and then you got Stetson next week at home, you have a chance to go 10-2 going into conference play. That would be a huge success. Nobody would have predicted them to go 10-2 non-conference.
Eric, I love the way you frame that before Bryson jumps in. You asked about the question last year being, who's going to close? Now you have to reframe the question in a different tense. Who's going to close? They have so many options with which to do it. You could use the same question. The tense has changed.
I think the biggest thing that I've seen with this men's basketball team is that one thing the team didn't have last year that it does now is consistency. Because last year, Brandon Mahan, Darren Green, Darius Perry, they were talented players. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the Michigan game wouldn't have happened if they weren't. But this team does it in a much more consistent basis. For one, Taylor Hendricks is just consistently good every single time out on the court. But what really works is also that you have CJ Kelly and Ithiel Horton and Michael Durr, and Jalen Young. Even if one of them maybe has a down game, you have another one of them that has a good game that can help back up Taylor Hendricks so he's not alone out there with a good points performance. And can we just, by the way, remember, Taylor Hendricks is a freshman. CJ Kelly is transfers. Imagine how good of a recruiting season Johnny Dawkins must have been having over the last couple of seasons as he was getting all of these players in around that same recruiting period. I mean, the fact that Darius Johnson
funny. Really? You don't say.
Hasn't been the primary scorer or playing as big of a role as he has, and yet this team has gotten off to the start of it as it has. That's amazing to me that Darius Johnson was able to be step back, and they're still doing this.
Really, Bryson? You don't say. Johnny Dawkins knows how to recruit, huh? Ain't that something?
Well, I mean, at one time,
because I've been reading all over the place that for like a few years, like, can Johnny Dawkins recruit? Turns out, yes. I guess I think we can say that now.
Bryson, remember what we were defining Johnny Dawkins basketball, what that was last year. and that the Michigan game wasn't that, right? We expect good defense from a Johnny Dawkins team, right? If it's going well, we expect multiple contributors in double digits, not just 20-point scorers, but 20-point scorers in addition to distributed ball. A guy with 4 for 17 still scores 10 points. DJ, my man, so
when he runs the offense, more importantly, what doesn't show up in the box score is he can run the offense, make the right decision where the offense is going.
That's fair, but listen, let's take nothing away from Jalen Young. I don't want to find a point on that, but the punchline is, yes, this is what Johnny Dawkins basketball is supposed to look like.
Well, it's gotten back to its identity, which is defense. That's how they got to the NCAAs in 19. That's how they made the run to the NIT Final Four, was defense. Quite frankly, we haven't seen that consistency on defense the previous last couple of years, a few years, for various reasons.
Seeing it now.
We're seeing it now. And again, look, they have a better resume right now than they did last year. You mentioned the Michigan win, Kyle. That was really their only quality key win, resume-wise. And Miami obviously turned into a resume quality win. This team's got wins over Oak State in a neutral court, and they got a win on the road against Ole Miss. Now they have an opportunity against Missouri. And you look at the American, Houston and Memphis are the clear-cut teams in the American. But there's a lot of questions after that.
Well, that's what I want to get to next, is this Mizzou game, because this is the biggest test of that defense that UCF has faced yet. Mizzou comes into this game, like you said, Eric, 9-1. They're actually coming off their most recent loss against Kansas, where Kansas actually held them to a season-low 67 points. But Mizzou this year is number 3 in the country in scoring, 90 points a game. 7th in field goal percentage. They're shooting over 50% as a team. They shoot a lot of threes, 28 a game. That's 18th in the country. And they force a lot of turnovers. So they're a really up-tempo team. They force 20 turnovers a game. That's 5th in the country. In their wins, they have scored no fewer than 82 points. And they're also a little ticked off after having lost to Kansas, I must say, probably. But this game is effectively a neutral site game, but it's down in Sunrise, all the South Florida. The actual South Florida UCF people are going to be at this game down in Sunrise, not far from our old stomping grounds. But this is the big test here, right? So, Kyle, I want to go with you. What do we got to see here? Because this matchup is looking like the unstoppable force meets the immovable object here.
No, I think that's a great analysis on the surface there too. And what I would want to see if I'm a UCF fan is I would remember the defense from the Samford game. Yes, I understand. But they're only whatever. Fine. It was an overtime game with a team that could shoot the ball with 82.
Is that what people say?
Well, according to South Park. Anyway.
Okay.
But you asked, I answered, Jeff. So with all that in mind, that's a group that was coming in shooting with great proliferation, right? 82.4, something like that, points a game themselves, right? They're chucking it from the cheap seats and they're making you pay. That rotation defense, that movement on defense that you were talking about, Jeff, again, taking nothing from that Ole Miss win, because Eric portrayed it well on the Black and Gold Banneret.com in his story. With all of that in mind, it's going to be that defense that I'm going to want to see for that Samford game. Where the Samford game went wrong was kind of the lack of discipline. That high tempo is what I get worried about. When this offense starts to get a little out of control because they're trying to push the tempo that hard, that's when you see that turnover number go up that Johnny Dawkins hates to see. That being said, I think Darius Johnson has had enough time to find his sea legs, as coach puts it, to where running at that high tempo is something that's going to be a bit easier to do. Let them make the mistake of focusing on Taylor Hendricks. Someone else will burn him. Read and react, take what the defense gives you in that instance. And I think DJ can do that. Defensively, you got to see that movement. If you look at the tape from the Samford game, that rotation and what they pulled off, being able to move, there would be a 5th pass and they'd still have a hand in someone's face for that shot.
Samford,
yes.
Yeah. Eric, this is going to be. Yeah, I do like Kyle's analogy about how Samford picked up the pace on UCF a little bit, and they did catch us off balance a few times in that game.
Well, I mean, look, Dennis Gates is the first-year head coach at Missouri, came over from Cleveland State, where they made the NCAAs 2 years ago, and then in NIT, was an assistant under Leonard Hamilton at Florida State. Prior to that, he likes to go up-tempo. So, yes, he's going to try to put pressure on UCF. UCF's going to have to protect the basketball. So it's going to be interesting in his first year. Missouri's got good athletes. Kind of a noon tip in Sunrise. By the way, it's good to see UCF playing in Sunrise. They've kind of not been able to accomplish that the last couple of years.
They couldn't do it because of COVID, right? They were supposed to play in this tournament twice, I think.
Yeah, it's been scrapped a couple times. So it's going to be interesting in Sunrise. Neutral court, another opportunity for UCF. Can they add to this non-conference resume? And then you've got a tricky game at home at Stetson and Donnie Jones, who's had a nice season with the Hatters, picking up a win over FSU as well. So a couple of games before conference play starts, December 28th. Conference is right here, boys. Wichita State comes here December 28th, the same day as the bowl game. My voice is getting ready for that game. Kyle, you're getting ready for that, right, Kyle?
Aren't we all?
Thank you. So this is important next couple of games before conference play starts. But this team has put it themselves in a nice position here, potentially. They can finish this off strongly here, Missouri and Stetson, to have some momentum going into league play. But you can just sense it. Jeff, you've been on the court during the home games. I've been on the court there too, couple games. Kyle, you've been up there as well. You could just sense a different energy about this group. There's no words to put it, but you can always tell when you're around teams, there's just a certain chemistry that you can't force. It's either there or it's not. And it's not anything negative or whatever. It's just
this team feels like it's having fun. That's how I put it.
Yeah, that's a good word.
They look like they have fun. They look like they enjoy playing together. Like, right. I mean, here we go with the body language doctor, right? But like I from where I sit, okay, when there's a dead ball, when they come over to the bench after, for a timeout, or like right before a free throw, there's that little moment where the team kind of gets together in like a little huddle. I always see these guys walking together, right? And it was something I noticed, like the last couple of years, they all kind of like walked separately to the bench. This group is much more in tune with each other chemistry wise. And I think the other thing too, that I really enjoy is have enjoyed seeing is they're unflappable, right? They don't seem to get eaten up by big moments, which is really something to see for a bunch of guys who are new playing together, including, one of your key players as a freshman. But
part of it is that a lot of these guys been thrown to the fire because they've had injuries to deal with. Darius Johnson missed the beginning of the year. CJ Walker was right now currently banged up, right, Kyle? We still don't know his status.
He's still recovering, even though he's played some games. I can't give enough praise to Jalen Young to the point you're making, man. The JUCO transfer having to pick up and run this offense as efficiently as he has and scoring like a madman when the time is called for it. Man.
Yeah.
That's a lot of depth. And I think the UNC Asheville game, right? The double overtime game, they were shorthanded. I know they lost that game. I think that helped them in the long run because they were literally shorthanded.
The players would agree with you, Elo. They've told me that.
They've told, well, there you go. See, I didn't know you were tight with them. Expand on that, what they said, because I do think at an adverse situation like that, I know it was a loss, people were like stunned, but I think that they grew from that because they all had to realize like we had to step up. Expand on that, what they told you.
Yeah, I mean, Taylor Hedrick said that very thing. It's like, when I asked him if the previous overtime games and stuff helped to win against Samford, for example, another in itself overtime game, he's like, yeah, he didn't elaborate too much, obviously, but I think the point he made of we had just seen it before, so it started to feel more normal is everything. You're right. If it's just that simple as there's no tension, and I mentioned, when they push the tempo, how it has gone wrong at times because they're still getting used to that, anything that can make it seem more routine is a good thing from a mentality standpoint.
All right, so we have that game coming up against Mizzou,
and I hope a lot of people just kind of embrace this team. By the way, I think this team needs to be embraced. Look, I don't know, and listen, we don't know what the rest of the year. I'm not saying this team's postseason, whatever. I think let's not get caught up in that. Let's just see what game to game what this team does. But I think this is a fun team to watch, and you're watching a really special group of players, and Taylor Hendricks in particular, obviously, is somebody that we'll be talking, I think, about for a long time. But I hope that the fan base, I know we're all caught up in who's in the portal and all that stuff. But that's okay too. Like, we could focus on a little bit of a basketball here. There will be. I will break news here. There will be a football roster come spring. Don't worry.
Oh my gosh, what am I gonna? I got a plan now.
I remember back last year during the Michigan game. I remember I said this on the night shift that we had after that game, that was a huge game for UCF men's basketball, because that was its first big game after football kind of wound down. And I think that this Ole Miss game almost kind of functioned in a similar manner, where the football season's kind of winding down, and now basketballs can start to take the main spotlight. And they just made a really big first impression in that main spotlight by defeating Ole Miss the way they did.
Yes, I would. I mean, but I think also we need to get that big home win going. I think once we get into conference play, Wichita State might be ripe on the 28th. But let's get through this Mizzou and then Stetson. Donnie Jones coming back into town.
No, hey, that's a pretty important game.
That becomes a pretty important game on Wednesday. By the way, the Bally Sports Florida is going to televise the Mizzou game. It's not going to be on.
Jeremy Taché will be on the sideline for that.
That's right. But UCF graduate Jeremy Taché. What's up, Jeremy?
By the way, by the way, the 3-point line, UCF defense will be challenged. Kyle, you saw it with Samford. You're going to see that with Stetson and Missouri. 3-point line.
They need to move.
Yeah.
Yep. Got to switch. Women last night. All right. 6-3 right now, 5-1 at home, but they let's be honest with you. They got it from Tennessee last night, 99-64 in Thompson Bowling up in Knoxville. And I think this is a situation where the women's team has lost 3 in a row now at Auburn, home against Seton Hall. That was a tough one. And then at Tennessee, I think it's kind of like, reality kind of setting in a little bit here about how there's still some work to do with this team. But looking at the box score here from this game, Kyle, Tennessee did what Tennessee does. But interestingly enough, after the Seton Hall game where she set a school record or tied a school record, was it, for rebounds in a game, Destiny Thomas did not play against Tennessee. We haven't heard anything on that. She was dressed. She was on the sideline. But we didn't see her against the Vols, despite the fact she pulled down 24 rebounds against Seton Hall the last time out. What did we see, if we saw anything, not just about that, but from the game in general?
Well, and you talked about Tennessee doing what Tennessee does, Jeff. I would be remiss if I don't point out, like, at least in the first half of the game, it was relatively close. This was a battle until
UCF led in the first, after the first.
Yeah, right, exactly. So it wasn't like, I'll put it this way. The question I would ask is, where did the bottom fall out exactly? But to even compete like that without Destiny Thomas, who last year with Abe and company, even say what you will, but she had Brittany Buckets and Mascaba and that group. They were so great up front. Sure, but it was Destiny Thomas putting 6'3" centers on their backs in that game. The ones that were hurt for Tennessee last year were guards for a lot of the part. They had one injured post player, if I remember correctly. But Destiny Thomas was making great impacts in that game. To see her miss this one is mind-boggling. The only guess I could put out for the moment, and we're waiting for a word on what actually the reason was, but the only thing I could put out for the moment is that there is some sort of a relatively minor injury, and this team is already so shorthanded with at least 3 players off the top of my head that are injured. Maybe Coach Messer's trying to be like, so I need Destiny for later.
Right, play the long game. Play the long game. Yeah,
correct. And I think in this case, based on her answers after the Seton Hall game, acknowledging this stretch that started with their first loss at Auburn, which Elo and I briefly went over last week. The team at large acknowledged this 3-game stretch is a tough one. And if this is one of those where they're mostly going to try to get experience and trying to toughen this team up.
Maybe that too.
Maybe there is some experimentation. Yeah, listen, one of the things that Destiny Thomas told me after the Seton Hall loss, that they are still might be doing in practice is looking through formations and different groupings on the court. So they're still at that point. If the veteran player is still saying that they're going through different player groupings, different personnel, in addition to working on free throw shots and defense. That should tell you, again, still identity forming. And it's not necessarily the fault of these ladies that's the case, or that coach is doing a bad job. Injuries have forced this sort of flexibility and adjustment to take place, and trying to find your footing's tough.
Well, they no better thing to do here than get a little bit of home cooking, and they are back home for a back-to-back on Tuesday, December 20th. They're facing Idaho State, and then they face Elon on Wednesday. I just want to quickly check the net rankings here on either of those teams.
Idaho, Kyle, that's a busy week.
Yeah,
for you.
Idaho State 175 in the net, and I'll check on Elon in a second. It is not owned by Elon Musk. I know that much. 218 for Elon, but little bit of let's be honest with you, in terms of competition level, a little bit of a lull in the schedule here to try and sort some things out, even though it is a back-to-back.
Well, you hope you get healthy on and off the court, right? Like, you got to get some bodies back, because Kyle, I mean, you mentioned Destiny. The one thing that's clear, and even in the Seton Hall game, there's not a lot around Destiny Thomas from a size standpoint when you're playing quality teams. That's what they used to have. They don't have that. Destiny, to your credit, you called this out last year. You said she would be a breakout player. She has been to this point. You hope that she's not out long when you get in, and have her ready to go for conference play, because I think she could be the comeback, the most improved player in the league, and could be an all-conference performer at the level she's playing. But hopefully she stays healthy. Kyle, I just don't see the depth there, and my concern is at times offensively, I feel like they're a little undisciplined. They kind of take some quick shots. And when you don't have depth, I don't think this team can afford to play fast and have a lot of possessions with the roster situation the way it is.
And listen, this isn't you making bad observations. The only offer, you're saying you're not seeing the depth. I'm telling you, you are. They're missing that many starters.
That's my point. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean,
yeah. And it's that same thing where I'm taking your question, but I'm just putting a different inflection on it. Yeah, no, you're seeing the depth. Like, you have Brianna Hardy as a power forward, because we all know Destiny's the center, right? I don't think anybody's arguing that. But when you have Brianna Hardy as a true freshman starting at power forward, that should tell you everything. And this isn't me knocking her game, by the way. Hardy, for what she's been asked to do, was done relatively well. Another thing I think we're still trying to absorb watching this team is how much they love to shoot that ball. Man, listen, when they came out against Seton Hall chucking it from the cheap seats, and when that wasn't landing, that's when they started feeding it down low. Taylor Gibson got some shots after that.
I thought they got back in the game because of that.
That's my point exactly, Eric Lopez. Well done. So that's where I'm going is this team, this is, again, that identity piece. They're trying to find it. Early on, putting up 33s and making 19 of them was something that would happen. Rachel Ranke was hot from the three-point arc. Ashton Verholst was doing the same. Now, and Layla Jewett, to even her credit, has had big games firing from beyond the arc. But we're not seeing that as much anymore. Listen, live by the three, die by the three. We just talked about that too, right, Jeff? So with all that in mind, there are times where death from the three is happening. If there's a three-point miss, you get Destiny Thomas snagging the board. You get Rachel Ranke doing the same. But when you don't have Destiny in the game, or she is boxing someone else out and the rebound is caught somewhere else, that's problematic. And let's give Taylor Gibson a little credit. She's still battling through a knee thing. I saw an ice pack on her after the game on Sunday. So she's still battling through something, man, listen, you mentioned the depth. I tell you, the fact is the way that they competed against Seton Hall, the way they made this game close for I'll call it 2.5 quarters against Tennessee, should tell you the depth is there. Imagine what if the starters were around. And one more time, I have to say it, even the office staff left with the previous coaching administration, okay? To see Coach Messer reload this group like that is impressive. To be in the middle of this conference is not a bad accomplishment. Your first year out, having to restock the pantry.
Yeah, no doubt. But as we go through this back-to-back is going to be a little bit rough, but then the schedule does kind of let up a little bit. Texas Southern on Thursday, December 29th, before they start conference play on the 3rd. So Yeah. I mean, this is kind of their last chance to get healthy before conference play starts. So
yes, we should give the gift of health to this team.
Yes.
That's what I think.
I know. That's what they need. All right. Last but not least, as we finish up here, of course, we talked about football, we talked about basketball, but a last word on volleyball. History this week, as McKenna Melville, whose illustrious career at UCF came to an end this season, has been named to the AVCA's AVCA first team All-American. She's the first player in UCF history to be a first team All-American. She finishes her career top 10 all-time in NCAA history in kills. In fact, I'm going through the list right now. She finishes 8th in total kills, regardless of era. Second all-time in the 25-point rally scoring era, only behind a player who she played against a few times, Jordan Thompson of Cincinnati. Obviously, she rewrote single-handedly UCF's volleyball record book, including defensive numbers, of course. And she gets named first team All-America. Bryson, I want to start with you here because we've been following this on MacWatch the entire time, and it's the perfect conclusion to a career that the caliber of which we may never see again.
I think so. And if we ever do, it's going to be a very long time before we do. The fact that she was named first team All-American, I think is sort of a credit to the achievements that she's been able to make her entire career, because she actually, if you notice, she did the same thing that Jordan Thompson did, where she went from being third team All-American in her second to last season to first team All-American in her final season after she made it into the top 10 all-time NCAA in kills. So credit to the AVCA for giving McKenna Melville the recognition she deserved for a overall career that was simply amazing. That was simply amazing to see. We also.
I was going to say, Eric, go ahead, because you called her games, her matches this year, and we saw firsthand. Like I thought it was. I think it was Carrie Zumock who said, she's like our Michael Jordan out there, and I think in more ways than one, because like she really was the on floor coach and had tremendous expectations for her teammates, and she was a cultural player.
Helped change the program in a lot of ways. And I'm actually going to try to write a column about this on Black and Gold Banneret here coming up about her ranking all time. I think she's the greatest volleyball player ever. And I think she's one of the greatest female athletes of all time. We've talked about Michelle Akers being number one. I think McKenna Melville will skyrocket the list. I'm going to write about this, but it's going to be like you've made a big imprint where this fall, when UCF is on the court in a volleyball match and she's not there, it's going to be weird because it's all She's just one of those, and there's a lot of people that don't follow the volleyball program but know who she is, and because of that, they've brought attention to the volleyball program. I think she's special in that regard, on and off the court. Bryson could speak to the student side because she achieved an achievement that not many students can. But to me, she's the greatest volleyball player ever. I think I did a top 80 female athletes of all time, 2020. I ranked her 20th because of her number. I won't spoil it. I'm going to write this column, but I will mention this.
She's moving up.
She's moving up. Sorry, McKenna, because McKenna liked number 20. It's her favorite number. I got bad news for you, McKenna. You're going to be ranked a different number. Hopefully you like the number, but she's skyrocketed. And I'll never forget the Houston match. Jeff, you were there.
Yep.
Bryce, you were there. It reminded me of the Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls against the Utah Jazz, Game 6, 98 finals, where this could be it for her as far as her last home match at the venue, like Michael Jordan's last game. And it comes down to the fifth set, and it's you have to win the set or you lose the conference title. That's it, because that's one of the reasons she came back, to win a fifth title. And it comes down against your nemesis the last 2 years in Houston, who have given her problems. They've been one of the great defensive teams. And she just helped them get them over the hump in that fifth set in that environment.
Didn't let them loose.
Didn't let them lose. Refused, put them on her back. Yeah. I think she had 29 kills, 10 digs. She almost ran over the UCF bench It was an iconic performance in her senior night. What a way to go out for her in that memorable match. And to me, that's what I'm going to write about her. I thought Kari Zumak hit it dead on. I think she is the Michael Jordan of this program. And with respect to the Tyra Harpers, Renata Menchikova, Jordan Pingle, Delana Sartin, if you want to, Jenny Frank, all awesome players, but they're not McKenna Melville.
No,
guys.
Package.
Yeah, it's not often that I open this term out of the case and polish it up for use here, but let me tell you, the word you're looking for, iconic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's an icon. And you're right, Eric. It's going to be weird not seeing her in a UCF uniform next year. And by the way, for those out there who might be splitting hairs about, well, she played 5 full seasons because of the COVID year. If you took the non-COVID years, all right, if you take out spring of 2021 and you add up her kill numbers, it comes out to 2,267, which would still be number 1 all time at UCF.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty good numbers, right? And by the way, she's 3rd in digs all time. She's done it all. Let me ask you this, Jeff. Retiring a number. I know that they do the Ring of Honor and all that. I feel like this should be an exception. I don't think anybody should wear 20. It would just feel odd. Like like it's softball, right? Like when every time somebody wears number 3, I'm like, that's Stephanie Bess's number.
I wouldn't want to wear 20 next year.
Right?
After this.
Like
Yeah.
Imagine whoever has to, I don't know who it's going to be. If it's going to be like Ava Armour or somebody comes in and wears 20.
Right.
It's like,
and I get it.
Let me tell you about who wore that jersey before.
Sure. Like there's already going to be enough questions about who's on the outside hitter and stuff like that. Maybe somebody just try to avoid giving out that 20 number. I just feel like that number, if we're going to retire a number in volleyball, I feel like that number should be retired. Just saying.
Well, I don't go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah, like if I'm playing for to make it the analogy, if I'm playing left tackle for the Jags, I don't want 77. Tony Pacelli was there. Yeah. Why on earth would I want to put that pressure on myself?
My analogy is Pete Myers.
Okay.
That's a good one. No, it's Chicago Bull reference. Michael Jordan. I like it.
Right. You talk about Michael Jordan because Pete Myers was the starting 2 guard for the Bulls the year when Jordan retired the first time. It's like nobody wants to be Pete Myers because no matter how good you are, you're not that guy or girl. Right.
And it puts unnecessary pressure on that player, in my opinion. I saw it firsthand in softball when Allison Kime graduated. Another player wore number 10, was a pitcher the following year. So what happens? The fans make the instant comparison to Allison, which is unfair because you're not Allison. And that's my concern. So I don't make the decisions on all that. And I understand it's not as simple as we're making this sound to. But if there's a way where nobody wears number 20, I would make the effort. That's all I'm saying.
I'm pretty sure our points are rather simple, actually, Eric. Not for nothing.
This is true.
Which brings us to the conclusion of our show. And by the way, thanks to Drew, Statboy Drew on Twitter, for joining us here. Now, next week, a couple announcements that I want to make. Next week, we're going to do a full preview of the bowl game. All right. We are also we have a special Christmas week present for you. Which I don't want to give anything away just yet, but we'll be cruising into the holidays, I think is what we'll be doing on this on the show, the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. And Bryson is smiling because he knows what I'm talking about. Thanks as always to you, our listeners, for following us. Make sure you follow us at UCF Banneret _SBN on Twitter. Follow us at Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret. You can also follow us on YouTube and Instagram. Thanks again to Kyle, the SOTG, for the student of the game. Thanks to Eric Lopez Elo. Bryson's It's Bryson Turner. And make sure you follow us on all of our social media channels and subscribe to this podcast if you don't already. If you do, please tell a friend. We really appreciate it, and let us know when you have subscribed as well, because we want to hear from you. And if you ever have any questions for us, you can always send us your questions at UCF Banneret _SBN. So for all of us here at Black and Gold Banneret, I'm Jeff Sharon saying thank you so much for listening. We will catch you next week. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the basketball. We preview the bowl coming up next. Enjoy, guys. Charge on. See you next week.